Look at humanity's earliest narratives, and you'll find something peculiar. From one edge of the world to another, civilizations that never communicated somehow shared identical stories. The Hopi nation speaks of underground saviors during global disasters, mysterious figures they called the Ant People. Deep within Saharan caves at Tassili Najjer, paintings over 10 millennia old show giants with unusual headgear. Mesopotamian tablets describe winged teachers bringing literacy and farming from above. Egyptian monuments carved celestial visitors into imperishable stone. Mali's Dogon tracked stellar bodies invisible without modern optics. Peru's desert floor bears massive etchings comprehensible only from altitude. These weren't random folklore fragments. They read like testimony, different languages describing identical experiences. Societies utterly isolated from one another, separated by geography and epochs, yet recounting the same narrative. Advanced beings arriving from the heavens, sharing transformative knowledge, warning of catastrophes. Divine beings? Educators? Something else entirely? The consistency demands attention. Major cultures worldwide preserve memories of a time when barriers between earth and sky dissolved, when superior entities moved among humanity. Sacred writings, monumental carvings, and oral traditions surviving countless empires all echo this theme. Perhaps mythology, perhaps not. But when thousands of miles and tens of thousands of years separate cultures telling the same contact story, dismissing it as coincidence becomes increasingly difficult. Before written history existed, there were observers, and they left records. Chapter 1. Prehistoric Witnesses. Early humans who first marked stone didn't document warfare or leadership. They immortalized what haunted their memories, images that inspired both wonder and terror. Across deserts, peaks, and rainforests, these original artists rendered what they witnessed. The images suggest something extraordinary once coexisted with them. In Algeria's isolated Tassili Najjer region, prehistoric paintings blanket cave walls and rock shelters, over 15,000 of them. 10,000 years ago, this wasn't barren desert, but verdant landscape with flowing water and abundant wildlife. The inhabitants hunted, foraged, and documented their existence in pigment. Among the antelope and human figures appear entities that seem wrong. Massive beings with spherical heads and peculiar helmets, limbs extended, some apparently hovering. Others connect via thin lines resembling tubes or cables. One figure dubbed the Great Martian God by early researchers dominates with an almost technological presence. Scholars classify them as shamanic visions or ceremonial symbols. Yet nothing else from this era depicts humans so unnaturally. These weren't rough god sketches or warrior representations. They were intentional, consistent, and impossibly sophisticated for their time. Whatever Tassili's people observed, they documented it precisely, ensuring future generations would remember. Across oceans in northern Australia, Aboriginal Wandjina figures gaze down from cliffsides and caverns with featureless pale faces and enormous dark eyes. Their heads feature radiant halos. Their bodies display cloak-like or suit-like patterns. According to indigenous people still living there, the Wandjina arrived from clouds, bringing rainfall and societal laws. They reshaped terrain, created waterways, and instructed humanity in proper living. After completing their mission, they ascended skyward. Today, local communities repaint these figures seasonally to maintain life's balance. The Wandjina aren't legends. They're ancestors who will return. The resemblance between Wandjina and Tassili figures is remarkable. Both appear helmeted. Both tower over humans. Both connect to celestial origins. Neither culture could have known the other existed. Yet their depictions share form and narrative, descent from above. This pattern repeats globally. In Italy's Alps, Valcamonica's carvings show human-like figures with circular helmets and radiating head rays. Some hold what resemble energy-emitting tools or weapons. Others stand beside star-like symbols. These carvings predate European written language by 8,000 years. Archaeologists categorize them as deity representations or celestial power symbols. But even this interpretation acknowledges these people envision their gods as light beings from above. Among North America's Hopi, oral histories describe the ant people who rescued humanity from twin destructions, one by inferno, another by deluge. The Hopi say they were taken underground until surface conditions became safe. The ant people weren't insects, but tall, dark entities with elongated heads and large eyes, strong enough to tunnel through Earth. When safe, they guided survivors surfaceward and returned to stars. For the Hopi, this isn't mythology but history preserved through ceremony and song. Further south, Brazilian rainforest caves at Serra de Capivara show paintings of small humans beside towering figures with oversized heads and extended arms. Some appear worshipful, others receptive to instruction. Nearby are geometric shapes and vertical lines resembling descending beams or ladders. Archaeologists easily identify animals and hunters, but cannot explain these giants. Regional tribes say the images depict the Karaja, beings who taught agriculture and seasonal prediction before vanishing skyward. In southern Africa's mountains, the San Bushmen painted similar scenes millennia ago. On Drakensberg range cave walls, tall, narrow figures radiate light, bodies surrounded by energy-like or heat-like lines. Some scholars suggest the paintings represent ritual trance states. Yet San's stories differ. They describe visitors who descended from heavens during droughts, offering guidance and knowledge before returning to stars. These accounts predate recorded history and remain in oral tradition. Each culture was separated by thousands of miles with zero contact possibility. Yet their earliest art shares focus on non-human beings descending from sky, teaching, then disappearing. The similarities are too specific for random chance. Round heads, glowing light, elongated limbs, and the repeated message, humanity was once visited by those from above. Mainstream scholarship views these depictions as symbolic expressions of dreams, rituals, or natural forces. They explain helmets as headdresses, beams as rain or light, glowing bodies as shamanic trance. Sometimes this may be accurate, but identical imagery's persistence across every inhabited continent raises questions symbolism alone cannot answer. For the first time in history, people were painting not just their world, but something beyond it. Their art captured a pattern continuing for millennia. Beings arriving from sky, bringing knowledge, then vanishing. Whether gods, ancestors, or another kind of visitor, they became the foundation of every subsequent civilization. From North African deserts to South American jungles, the first witnesses left messages carved into Earth itself. And as those figures faded from sky, something new appeared on ground. Monumental stone structures rising suddenly from nowhere, as if humanity had been shown construction methods. Chapter 2. The Knowledge Bearers. When the Ice Age concluded and the world began recovering, humans emerged from survival's shadows into a creative new era. Cave painting hunters began building societies, domesticating animals and cultivating crops. Civilizations appeared almost instantaneously where archaeological records show no gradual learning curve. The pattern spans continents. Agriculture's rise, mathematics, astronomy, and architecture often follow stories of sky-descending beings passing knowledge no hunter-gatherer could possess. These were the ancient world's teachers, remembered not as people but as gods. In Mesopotamia's cradle approximately 6,000 years ago, Sumerians built Earth's first true cities. They created writing, developed legal systems, and tracked planetary movements with precision, still impressing modern scholars. They credited none of it to themselves. Every innovation allegedly came from the Anunnaki, meaning those who from heaven to earth came. Their oldest texts describe the Anunnaki descending in fiery craft, landing where smoke and thunder marked their arrival. Gods Enki and Enlil supposedly gave humanity language and agriculture, teaching irrigation canal construction and seasonal measurement. Sumerians even recorded orbits of naked-eye invisible planets. When 19th century scholars translated these tablets, they called them mythology. Yet the stories contain technological imagery without daily life counterparts. Cuneiform tablets describe the Anunnaki arriving in groups, organizing labor, and introducing advanced mathematics for field measurement and grain storage. To Sumerians, gods weren't ethereal forces, but physical beings who walked among them, ruled their cities, and returned skyward when finished. Archaeology shows Sumerian world emerged without clear predecessors. From Mesopotamia, similar ideas spread down the Nile. Ancient Egyptians called their beginning Zep Tepi, the first time, when gods descended from sky to create order from chaos. They described tall, luminous beings arriving in primordial waters, teaching language, engineering, and medicine. In their texts, god Thoth gave writing to mankind. Osiris and Isis brought agriculture and law. Great architect Imhotep supposedly learned from gods themselves, designing Saqqara's step pyramid, using knowledge appearing from nowhere. Every temple wall and sacred scroll references Zep Tepi as an age of direct god-human contact. Egyptians built monuments not as tributes to human kings, but as replications of something higher, preserving what they'd been shown. Their pyramids aligned perfectly with Orion's stars, a pattern recurring in ocean-separated cultures. Mainstream Egyptology calls it heavenly devotion. Older texts call it memory. Thousands of miles away in Central American jungles, Maya and Aztec civilizations told similar stories. They spoke of gods arriving after great floods, bringing knowledge to rebuild the world. Among them was Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, a pale bearded man arriving from the sea on a shining vessel, moving without oars or sails. He taught astronomy, architecture, and moral law. Aztecs said he promised to return one day. When Spanish ships appeared centuries later, they believed that promise kept. Maya called him Kukulkan. His temples were built with perfect astronomical precision. Chichen Itza's Great Pyramid was designed so twice yearly, equinox shadows create a serpent sliding down the staircase. A display of geometry and timing, demonstrating scientific knowledge few think jungle peoples should possess. In South America, the legend takes another form. Incas and older Tiwanaku culture worshipped Viracocha, a bearded teacher god emerging from Lake Titicaca after chaos and darkness. He brought light, rebuilt the world, and taught humanity civilization skills before disappearing across the ocean, promising to return in need. Viracocha statues depict him holding tool-like or measurement instrument-like rods. When Spaniards arrived in the 16th century, Andean people believed they were witnessing their god's return. Archaeological evidence from Tiwanaku and Pumapunku shows engineering so advanced that even modern stonemasons struggle to replicate it. Local legend says it was built under Viracocha's direction in one night. Across the ocean in India, one of the world's oldest languages records encounters between humans and gods, not in temples but in sky. Sanskrit texts of the Mahabharata and Vedas describe Vimanas, flying chariots used by gods in battle and travel. Texts include propulsion details, sound, and even weapons producing blinding light and heat. The Ramayana tells of a chariot that could fly to heavens and return, powered by fire beneath. Some describe these craft as spheres, others as star-traveling structures. Scholars interpret them as poetic metaphors for divine power. Yet the technical description level in these ancient texts is remarkable. The Indian subcontinent's earliest civilizations appeared soon after these stories were written, bringing new architecture and astronomy forms, suggesting more than imagination was at work. China's oldest legends tell of beings descending from sky on glowing orbs, appearing as light dragons. These dragons taught humanity crop cultivation, irrigation use, and star reading. The Yellow Emperor myth describes him arriving on a sun-bright floating chariot, leading his people into a golden age of invention. He supposedly introduced the compass, medicine, and metallurgy, technologies appearing suddenly and transforming the Chinese world. Ancient records described emperors as heaven's sons, beings whose authority came directly from stars. The same cycle repeats in every following civilization: disaster or flood, luminous beings' arrival, knowledge transfer, then departure. Each culture gave these figures different names, but their function never changed. They appeared at human development's turning points, as if guiding the species from one age to the next. Archaeology shows these stories align with sudden technological and understanding leaps. Sumerians went from farming mud plains to mapping the solar system. Egypt advanced from simple tombs to geometrically perfect pyramids. Maya built calendars predicting celestial events thousands of years ahead. The Indus Valley, home of earliest Sanskrit texts, mastered urban planning with precision drainage systems still admired by engineers. In China, first dynasties appeared already equipped with astronomy and mathematics. None of these civilizations show gradual evolution we'd expect if they discovered these skills independently. They appear in the record fully formed, as if knowledge had been imported. Mainstream historians explain these myths as reflections of human aspiration. The sky gods, they say, represent humanity's longing for progress personified in the heavens above. Yet that argument overlooks these stories' precision. The physical descriptions, recurring flight symbols, light, sound, and tangible advancements following them. Myths can inspire, but they don't teach metallurgy, astronomy, or written language overnight. Something beyond imagination seems to connect these beginnings. Every one of these legends describes the same chain: beings from above arriving after catastrophe, rebuilding the world, and imparting knowledge before departing. Whether deified ancestors, lost civilization survivors, or visitors from beyond, the pattern remains identical. Humanity wasn't left to stumble blindly into civilization. It was shown how. There's no single explanation satisfying both myth and evidence. Religious interpretation calls them gods. Scientific view calls them allegories. A third perspective sees them as cultural memories, distorted records of real encounters that ancient people could only describe using available language. When they saw ships descending from sky or heard non-storm thunder or fire, they described gods because they had no other word for what they witnessed. What's certain is each of these civilizations, isolated by oceans and time, claimed their greatest achievements were gifts. Sumerians credited the Anunnaki. Egyptians thanked Thoth. Maya looked to Kukulkan. Incas worshipped Viracocha. Hindus praised Vimana gods. Chinese honored their light dragons. Civilizations separated by thousands of years shared the same origin story. Everything they knew began when sky opened. The moment those visitors departed, the world changed. Humanity began building upward-reaching monuments, carving gods into stone, and aligning temples to stars. The ancient world's teachers were gone, but their influence remained in every brick and tablet left behind. And just as quickly as they appeared, they vanished. Yet evidence of what they left, the knowledge, the architecture, civilization's sudden rise itself, remains etched into earth, waiting for those willing to see it. Chapter 3. Images Across Time. Art is humanity's oldest record. For thousands of years, it has carried messages words could never hold. When we look closely, a single pattern appears across every era and continent. Images of beings who were not entirely human. Carved in stone, painted on walls, molded in clay, these depictions are separated by oceans and millennia. Yet they tell the same story through shape and symbol. In Egypt, the land of eternal sky and stone, temples still whisper their history in color and relief. Along Abydos walls, priests and deities are carved beside objects modern eyes recognize immediately. Shapes resembling aircraft, helicopters, and vessels with aerodynamic lines. Mainstream Egyptology calls them coincidences formed by overlapping hieroglyph layers. Yet the resemblance is undeniable. Egyptians spoke of their gods as the Shining Ones, luminous beings from stars bringing order to earth. Their sky wasn't just myth's canvas, but an origins map. On Dendra Temple's ceiling, the famous zodiac relief shows intricate constellation alignment, planetary orbits, and symbols perfectly matching modern astronomical layouts. It suggests cosmic understanding far beyond what ancient Egypt was supposed to know. Travel west across the Atlantic, and the same shapes appear again, hidden in Mexico's jungles. On Maya ruler Pakal's stone sarcophagus lid, buried in Palenque, a figure sits surrounded by strange machinery. He leans forward in a position that to modern eyes resembles a pilot. Flames or propulsion shoot from beneath. His hands grip handles, his feet press pedals, and his eyes face upward. Archaeologists insist it's a stylized image of the king descending into the underworld, but the detail is unlike any other period art. Every element, the chair, the levers, the fire, looks functional. It's as though the artist saw something mechanical and tried capturing it using their time symbols. At Teotihuacan, the so-called City of the Gods, carvings depict figures with square helmets and rigid suits, standing among geometric patterns that could almost be circuits or architecture. The city itself, viewed from above, forms the precise solar system layout, complete with sun, planets, and an orbital path leading to the Pleiades, the same star cluster Egyptians and many others considered sacred. No one knows who built Teotihuacan or why they vanished. All that remains are carvings and the city's name, meaning the place where men became gods. Far to the east in India's plains, art tells the same story through color and poetry. Ancient epics of the Mahabharata and Ramayana describe sky chariots known as vimanas, flying palaces used by gods in wars and travels. Temple carving sculptures of those stories show machines resembling domes, spheres, and towers mounted on flame-emitting platforms. Texts describe propulsion systems powered by fire and sound, sun-bright weapons, and earth-scorching explosions. Historians call these passages allegory, but their consistency across centuries is remarkable. India's earliest depictions of these celestial craft appear alongside God's images, not winged, not mystical, but commanding devices that rise and descend with thunder. In West Africa, on Mali's arid plateaus, the Dogon people preserve one of Earth's most mysterious legacies. Their oral traditions tell of the Nomo, amphibious beings from star Sirius. The Dogon say they descended from sky in a spinning vessel, landing amid fire and noise. The Nomo taught agriculture, astronomy, and the cosmos's sacred order. The tribe still honors them with carvings showing fish-like forms standing upright with elongated bodies and skyward-gazing eyes. For generations, the Dogon have described Sirius as a binary star system, Sirius A, a bright visible star, and Sirius B, its unseen companion. In Northern Europe, Neolithic stone carvings reveal another expression of the same theme. Across Scandinavia, Bronze Age petroglyphs show circular discs hovering above human figures with lines beneath suggesting movement or light. Others depict what appear to be boats or sunships sailing through sky. Archaeologists interpret them as solar symbols, representations of the sun's heavenly journey. But the repeated inclusion of figures standing within the discs, surrounded by rays, implies something more literal. The same designs appear on stones thousands of miles apart, identical patterns of circles, beams, and human silhouettes. Across the sea in Japan, small clay statues called doge add another layer to this puzzle. Made over 2,000 years ago, they stand barely a foot tall but capture astonishing detail. Each figure wears what appears to be armor, thick bodysuits with ridges and plates. Their heads are oversized, their eyes enormous and almond-shaped, covered by goggles. Some have tubes or attachments curving around the neck. Archaeologists label them fertility idols, suggesting the armor represents clothing or ritual ornamentation, but their proportions and design look more like protective suits, complete with joints and seals. The doge are unique in Japanese art, unlike any other cultural artifact of the time. When placed beside depictions from Egypt, Mexico, and Mesopotamia, they fit perfectly into a global mosaic of similar forms. Taken together, these images stretch across every age of human history. Each culture portrayed their gods not as distant spirits, but as physical beings clothed in technology, commanding flight, light, and sound. From pyramids to Andes, from Indian temples to Scandinavian rocks, the same motifs reappear: helmets, discs, luminous bodies, vehicles rising from or descending to Earth. None of these civilizations could have influenced one another. Mainstream archaeology explains this repetition as early society's imagination, each projecting power and mystery onto heavens. Circular shapes become suns, suits become robes, light beams become divine presence rays. But if the intention was depicting gods in symbolic form, why portray them as beings encased in armor with lensed eyes and bodies so unlike human anatomy? Why do the same details appear from Japan to Egypt to Mesoamerica? The simplest explanation is that these civilizations drew what they believed they saw. They didn't share ideas or iconography. They shared an experience. Something descended from above, something leaving an impression strong enough to endure in stone. Whether those visitors were mythic gods, lost civilization remnants, or something entirely beyond our understanding, their image persisted across time. Shapes changed slightly, but the pattern stayed constant. If they were only gods, why depict them as so distinctly non-human? Why cover them in suits, give them helmets, and surround them with fire and light? What made these ancient artists describe their deities in terms sounding less like dreams and more like encounters? But the real question isn't just what these civilizations saw, it's what they did next. The monuments they raised, the cities they built, and the sudden mastery of stone and mathematics that followed. Whatever inspired those images left more than memories. Chapter 4. Monuments to the Sky. Across the ancient world, the same pattern repeats. Myths of beings descending from sky are followed by monuments reaching for it. Vast structures rise suddenly out of history, built with engineering no one expected from their time. Each one aligned to heavens as though builders wanted gods to see their work from above. These aren't just temples or tombs. They are messages in stone, created by people who believed they were honoring something that once walked among them. In southeastern Turkey's dry hills, buried beneath soil and time layers, stands the oldest of them all. Göbekli Tepe is the first great monument humanity ever built. Its carved pillars date back over 11,000 years, centuries before agriculture or first cities. The site appeared fully formed. Vast circular enclosures filled with sculpted limestone blocks, weighing up to 20 tons each. Carvings show foxes, lions, vultures, and abstract symbols arranged in repeating patterns across the site. No one knows why it was built, but every part was constructed with precision far beyond what hunter-gatherers were thought capable of. Archaeologists once assumed civilization began with farming, but Göbekli Tepe reverses that logic. Its builders were still nomadic, yet they came together to raise Earth's first stone sanctuary. When work finished, they buried it deliberately, sealing it beneath tons of soil as though to protect or hide it. Many pillars face celestial points connected to Orion and Sirius, the same constellations linked to gods in later Egyptian and Mesopotamian cultures. It's as if Göbekli Tepe was designed to mirror the sky itself, a meeting place between heaven and earth. Regional myths that survived speak of deities who descended from stars to create the world anew after a great flood. If those stories have roots in reality, Göbekli Tepe may have been their first altar. Far to the south, in Mesopotamia's valleys, the people who followed built their own stone and clay mountains. Sumerian ziggurats were massive step towers climbing toward sky in geometric precision. Each layer represented one heaven level, and at the top sat a small shrine, the god's dwelling place. The word ziggurat comes from Akkadian for to rise high. To Sumerians, they were literal stairways to heaven. The most famous, the Great Ziggurat of Ur, was dedicated to moon god Nana, but its design follows a pattern older than the city itself. Every Sumerian city had its ziggurat, and all were aligned to celestial points reflecting stars and planets pre-subserved from their summits. Stories written on clay tablets describe the Anunnaki descending from heavens in great storms and fiery clouds. Ziggurats may have been built as landing platforms for gods, or perhaps as monuments to bring them back. Their very shape echoes mountain form, an artificial peak raised where divine could meet mortal. When later empires rose, Babylon, Assyria, Persia, they kept the design but forgot its origin. What had once been a beacon to sky became a symbol of royal power. But in its beginning, the ziggurat was a conversation with heavens. Half a world away in Mexico's valley, another city rose with the same ambition. Teotihuacan was known to Aztecs as the place where men became gods. Long before they arrived, its builders constructed a city of perfect geometry. The Avenue of the Dead runs straight for 2 miles, lined with temples aligning to Sun, Moon, and Orion's belt stars. The city's layout mirrors inner planet spacing. Beneath its pyramids lie tunnels and chambers lined with mica sheets, a mineral that reflects heat and radiation. Technology without obvious purpose for a society supposedly lacking advanced tools. The Pyramid of the Sun, one of Earth's largest, is built over a cave extending deep underground. Archaeologists found mercury traces and liquid pools inside, suggesting rituals involving light and reflection. Mercury was known in ancient times as liquid silver, associated with immortality and the divine. In Teotihuacan, it may have symbolized the shimmering path between Earth and stars. No one knows who built the city. No written records exist to name its creators, but its design, its precision, and its astronomical alignment all point to a purpose beyond survival or politics. Teotihuacan was a place to touch heavens. South of Mexico, high in the Andes at 12,000 feet altitude, lies one of the planet's most puzzling sights. Pumapunku's ruins defy explanation even in the modern age. Andesite stone blocks found here weigh over 100 tons each and are cut with such accuracy they fit together like machine pieces. Some are shaped into perfect interlocking H patterns, with holes bored straight through their centers. Geologists confirm the rock's hardness makes it nearly impossible to carve with bronze or stone tools. Yet someone shaped them with millimeter-measured precision. Local legends say gods built Pumapunku in a single night after descending from sky. They call the creators Viracocha and his helpers. The same teacher gods said to have emerged from Lake Titicaca after flood to restore humanity. Modern engineers have studied the stones and still cannot fully explain how they were quarried, moved, and assembled. The site shows no evidence of primitive ramps or chisels that would have been required. And yet it stands there, weathered by time but unmistakably artificial. Like Göbekli Tepe and Teotihuacan, it is both temple and question carved into earth. Across the Mediterranean, another ancient mystery rises above Lebanon's plains. The temple complex of Baalbek, dedicated to Jupiter by Romans, sits atop a foundation far older than their empire. Beneath classical columns are stones unlike anything else from the ancient world. And another, the stone of the pregnant woman, weighing over 1,000. Even modern cranes would struggle to lift them, yet they were set perfectly into place by an unknown civilization. The site has been used and rebuilt for thousands of years, but the foundation remains a puzzle. Romans built their temple on top of it as if claiming what was already sacred. Local legends say the foundation was laid by the first kings after the flood, instructed by beings who came down from sky. The name Baalbek itself derives from Baal, ancient god of storms and lightning. Far to the east, deep in Cambodia's jungles, Angkor Wat's towers rise like a mirage from trees. Built in the 12th century, it remains the world's largest religious monument. The temple's layout mirrors constellation Draco and the Milky Way's path as seen from Cambodian skies 1,000 years ago. Each tower represents a celestial body. The entire structure forms a cosmic map, carved in stone. Khmer inscriptions say it was designed after the god's blueprint, a heaven model on Earth. Even today, Angkor Wat's precision challenges modern surveying tools. Its builders understood astronomy, geometry, and hydraulics with mastery seeming far beyond their time's resources. They surrounded the temple with massive moats and canals aligning with solstices and equinoxes. Every wall, every tower is part of a pattern meant to be read from sky. Scholars say it was devotion. Builders said it was instruction. Across all these sites, from Turkey's buried sanctuary to Cambodia's living temple, the story never changes. A culture experiences contact or catastrophe, and suddenly their architecture transforms. Knowledge to move stone, align stars, and calculate time appears almost overnight. These monuments are not random devotional acts, they are deliberate attempts to connect Earth to something greater. No one knows what inspired these builders or how their methods spread. The civilizations that built them rose and fell, yet their monuments endured. The great mystery is not who built them, but why. Every culture believed they were recreating what they had once seen. They carved heavens into stone and raised Earth to meet it. If these monuments were meant to honor something beyond themselves, then the real question isn't who built them, but who they were built for. Chapter 5. Theories and Interpretations. For centuries, humanity has tried to explain how so many identical stories appear in every world corner. Why did people who never met, never shared language or trade, describe gods who descended from sky, taught civilization, and promised to return? Archaeology can date monuments. Anthropology can trace migrations. But the ideas behind them, the shared visions, the identical faces, the sudden knowledge leaps, still defy single explanation. Over the years, scholars, scientists, and storytellers have proposed their own answers. Each theory can explain part of the mystery, but none explain all of it. One of the earliest ideas came from psychologist Carl Jung, who called it the collective archetype theory. Jung believed humanity shares a subconscious structure inherited from ancestors, a mental framework producing recurring symbols. The hero, the mother, the serpent, the god from above. These archetypes, he said, arise from deep within human psyche, appearing in every culture because they're part of what it means to be human. From this view, sky beings are projections of ourselves, manifestations of our need for meaning and power beyond ordinary life's reach. Helmets, wings, and shining lights represent unknown forces of nature and imagination that early people tried to personify. Archetypes can account for symbols like serpent or sun, but they don't explain why distant civilizations depicted the same beings with round helmets, lensed eyes, and rising, burning machines. The psychological pattern may exist, but something still feels missing, as if there was shared memory. Another approach is cultural convergence, the idea that isolated humans arrive at the same myths because their circumstances were the same. Every culture looked to the same sky, relied on the same rain and drought cycles, and feared the same natural forces. When they imagined gods, they placed them where power came from, in heavens. In this view, similarities are coincidence born from shared experience, not contact. It's appealingly simple. Human brain seeks patterns, give it thunder, sunlight, and stars, and it will invent explanatory stories. But again, there are inconsistencies. Convergence might explain why people revered sky, but not why myths contain such specific, overlapping descriptions. Gods don't simply live above, they descend. They don't just send messages. They arrive in forms sounding physical, tangible, mechanical. Their presence is measured in noise and light, not metaphor. The same pattern, descent, instruction, departure, appears across ocean-separated continents and ages. Cultural convergence can explain similar fears but not identical narratives. A different school of thought suggests something more grounded. These stories come from a real civilization, long lost to history. Popularized by writers like Graham Hancock, this lost civilization theory proposes that an advanced culture existed before the last ice age. When the ice age ended around 12,000 years ago, rising seas and global floods wiped them out, leaving only survivors who scattered across the world. Those survivors carrying culture fragments became teachers remembered as gods. They passed on agriculture, architecture, and timekeeping principles, allowing early societies to rebuild faster than they could have alone. It's an idea bridging archaeology and myth. It doesn't require extraterrestrials, only the possibility that our human development timeline is incomplete. Evidence of advanced prehistoric structures like Göbekli Tepe supports the notion that complex architecture existed earlier than expected. Sudden appearance of megalithic construction and precise celestial knowledge in multiple regions could be this forgotten civilization's legacy. Critics argue there's no definitive proof, no metal tools, no written records, no unbroken lineage. Yet absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. If such a society was coastal, as many have suggested, most remains would now be underwater, hidden beneath post-Ice Age world's rising seas. Then there's the idea inspiring much modern fascination, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. It suggests ancient gods weren't human at all but visitors from another world. According to this view, early people mistook technology for divinity. Shining chariots described in India, Sumer's fiery clouds, Mesoamerica's feathered serpents, all could be attempts to describe flying craft or advanced beings seen through ancient understanding's lens. Temples, pyramids, and ziggurats that followed weren't built by aliens but by humans imitating what they saw, honoring or attempting to reconnect with the visitors who taught them. It's a theory inspiring generations of researchers, yet it sits on the border between possibility and belief. No physical evidence of extraterrestrial contact has been found, but coincidences remain persistent. Same geometry appears in monuments across the world. Same constellations are worshipped from Egypt to China. Myths describing fire, thunder, and flight appeared long before humanity mastered metal. Whether coincidence, archetype, or memory, similarities push against explanation's limits, and the questions remain open, waiting for those curious enough to explore them. Until we find definitive answers, we can only do what our ancestors did: look up, wonder, and keep searching for the truth hidden in our forgotten past. Thank you for exploring these mysteries. Stay curious, stay questioning, and keep seeking the extraordinary stories hidden in our history.